Time for Mary Holm now. Our personal finance expert joins me via Zoom. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Jesse.
Congratulations. You're sounding crystal clear. No problems with the technology, I'm sure.
We got there in the end, didn't we?
Hey, you've
Yeah.
been to what looks like a really interesting conference.
Yes. It was a 2-day conference last week, and I unfortunately could go only on the second day. But it was run by Te Ara Ahunga Ora, which is the Retirement Commission. And what they did is get together about 250 people who are involved in improving New Zealanders' financial capability,
Right.
really.
You would have been
So it
first
was a
on,
bit,
first on the list, no doubt.
oh, no. It's people out there in New Zealand working on various projects in one way or another to improve
Yeah.
people's financial knowledge. An interesting thing about it was that the people at the conference were quite different from the people I see at, I sometimes go to conferences run by financial institutions, I
Mm.
suppose, and the people there tend to be in corporate clothes and largely Pākehā, unfortunately,
Mm.
whereas this was people of a much wider range of people and a lot of people who weren't Pākehā, which was great. It was a great mixture of New
Yeah,
Zealanders, I thought,
for sure.
and doing some good stuff. There was one particular talk that I thought I might zero in on first by a guy named Vishal George, who's a behavioral scientist. And a few points that he made that I thought were pretty interesting. One was he started out by saying, it's not really a matter of how much money you make. And he gave as an example some NFL football players in America who made huge amounts of money during their short careers.
Yeah.
But 15% of them later went bankrupt.
How many?
So 15%, he
Yeah.
said in one piece of research. They probably get used to the high living, I suppose. When they stop playing, the money's not coming
I
in
think that's
anymore.
true of
But
anyone, Like I think of, high
yeah,
profile media people who've been doing it for years and you think, oh, well, they made a lot of money while they were doing it. They're probably all set up for life. But I don't know, unless you're really conscious of doing it and quite disciplined, I think probably your life expands to fill the income you've got.
I'm afraid that I think you're absolutely right. In a lot of cases where people are, making huge amounts, yeah, and not from, say, building up their own company,
Yeah.
but some kind of career that doesn't last forever. So that was just interesting, sort of comforting thing,
Yeah.
I suppose. Um, Another point he made was that it's a really good idea to actually visualize your goals. And an example he gave was there's been apparently quite a lot of research on people running long races. And they found that if they visualized crossing the finishing line, they performed better. If they had that kind of picture in their mind as they were running, it made a difference to their performance. I'm not quite sure how the research was done, but he said, if you've got a savings goal, if you're saving for a holiday, say, you might want to put pictures on the wall of the place you're hoping to go to. And the same with retirement savings. If you've got a picture, a real picture as well as a picture in your mind, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just visualizing the goal helps people to get to it. There's been various research that shows that, which was interesting. And then he talked about how it matters how a situation is framed. And an example he gave was that if you gave people the options of either saving $150 a month or $35 a week or $5 a day. Now, those three are actually the exact same amounts of money. They're all $5 a day, but
But I
their
like the $5 a
percentages.
day one, Mary. That sounds much
Well,
more achievable.
exactly, and they found 4 times more people were likely to commit to $5 a day than the other amounts. And I think that's pretty interesting
Yeah.
because you can do it yourself. You can actually, I don't think the banks would have any objection to you're setting up transferring $5 a day from your just sort of everyday
Yeah.
account into a savings account. You
But
can
man,
certainly
that
do it
that
on.
$150 a month would hurt.
Yes, that's right. And yeah, so that's not just about how you perceive it. It's kind of a practical issue too, isn't it? The 150 is coming out. Oh gosh, can't
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
cope with that. But $5 a day, it is the sort of same kind of level as a cup of coffee.
Hmm.
Um, as we've said before, I think you and I don't really like saying to people you shouldn't have your coffee, but maybe you can have your coffee and save $5 a day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and one more.
Doesn't make you a very popular personal finance expert, Mary, if you're charging people for drinking takeaway coffee.
Yeah, well, as we often say, people have got to lead a nice life in the
Yeah.
meantime as well. But a bit of both works quite well. And one last point that I thought he made that was worth discussing a bit was that people quite often justify spending by saying, "Look, this is a one-time thing." Um, and so I'll just, spend a bit more on it at the moment because I'm not going to be coming back and doing this again. And he gave an example of a woman whose TV broke down, and so when she went to replace it, she thought, "Oh, I don't buy a TV very often at all, so I'll get the best one." And then later that week, she was making plans for the 10-year wedding anniversary, and so she booked some quite expensive trip for a weekend because she thought you only have a 10-year anniversary once in your life, or hopefully. Um, and then the following week, her favourite jazz band in the world came to town, and she said to herself, "That's once in a lifetime, so I'm going to get really good tickets for it." And
Yeah.
I don't know whether this was a real woman or not, but his point was that we can overdo that justification. If we keep on all the time saying, so I suppose you've got to be, good idea to be selective about which once in a lifetime or once in every 10 years we're gonna spend a lot of money, and not make that too much of a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sometimes
Mm,
happens in our house. We
Um,
think, should we have a bottle of bubbles tonight? Oh, well, it's been a huge week. We've finally got to the end of it. Oh, well, our son's
yes.
just turned 5. It's his first day of school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's the first day of the week and we've got
Yeah,
through
yeah.
it.
Which reminds me of an old saying, always have a bottle of champagne in the fridge for a special occasion, even if that special occasion just happens to be having a bottle of champagne in the fridge.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yes, yes. Yeah, and you know what? Once again, happy medium here going on here, I suppose. Um, but then there were lots of other people at the conference um, making various interesting points. One that I thought struck me was that when they're looking at research into abuse in general, they found that financial and economic abuse had almost twice as much impact on your mental well-being as other abuse, which in it obviously, if someone's bashing you really badly, that probably doesn't apply. But the point is, I suppose, that if one person has control of the money and is not letting the other one have a fair amount, a reasonable amount, that's deeply depressing, and because on and on it goes. You can't buy things for yourself,
Yeah, well,
etc. So
sadly, it usually
yeah,
forms a pattern of behaviour, right? Where it's emotional abuse
yes,
and financial abuse, and geographical isolation and cutting off from your friends, and yeah, nasty picture. But yes,
yes,
I guess
or
the point is not to underestimate that sort of abuse.
yes, I'm sure you're right. That is the point, that people say, well, he wasn't hitting me, so it's not that bad. Well,
Yeah.
that's not really
Mm.
a valid comment. But I have to say, most of the comments that people were making at the conference were fairly positive, which was great because it's easy to get pretty gloomy about financial situations of people. And just a couple of examples of that. one person or a couple of people on a panel were talking about the importance of a family having a car and how we might say, well, people can use public transport, but in a lot of New Zealand, that's just not at all feasible,
Yeah.
especially rurally, but even in town sometimes. And they were saying that, there are problems. People who are really struggling tend to buy cheap cars, and then the insurance tends to be high on them and they break down a lot. And so they might have really stretched to buy the car, but they then can't afford to keep it going.
Mm.
Um, and so there are some programs that are offering zero interest loans to people. I'm not right up with exactly who's doing that, but there are some out there, zero interest loans for people to buy cars, acknowledging that families often do need a car to function. Another little story I liked was uh, all the siblings in the family, there must have been adult siblings, banded together to buy the first family home. And I thought that was kind of neat, presumably for their parents.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, kind of wonderful stuff going on out there. And more broadly, there was quite a lot of talk about programs going on in schools. So the sorted with the Retirement Commission's school programs, and then there's Banquer, Banquer, I think it's spelled,
Yeah.
which is another program that's really catching on in schools. And it sounds as though the majority of schools are getting some financial education, primary and secondary schools now, which is great news.
Responding
And
to the calls for many years for something like that to
yeah,
happen. I think I remember you saying at some point, Mary, that you actually weren't as hot on that as a lot of people seem to be. Does that ring a bell for you?
not really.
No, you're all for it.
Clearly, yes, yeah. I mean, clearly they've got to get programs that work for the kids.
Mm.
There has been some criticism about, even in the last few years of high school, talking about mortgages and things as kind of over the kids' heads, and it's too far away, and it's not very real for them. So it's more, so the messages that really matter for them are probably the power of saving and compound interest, and the importance of not getting into debt. That sort of stuff is probably more relevant
Yeah.
for the kids.
Okay, good. I must have
What
misremembered
have
that
you?
conversation. That's all good. Yes, I don't think many people would disagree anyway. Having kids at least thinking about money and understanding how it works and how it can get out of hand is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I do feel a bit sorry for the schools because everyone's saying, they need to understand nutrition better, and who would argue with that? And they need to understand the importance of exercise more, and who would argue with that?
Yeah.
And the poor old schools have got to try and fit everything in. But at the same time, finances are quite important. A lot of people, get into big trouble when they're young, and it's very hard to get out of after
Mm.
that. So, yeah. Have we got time to talk a bit more
We
about
do. We do.
one? Yeah, there was one particular man who spoke at the conference who I found really rather inspiring. His name is Fala Tavita, and he runs a program in Pororua East called Le Fale. And he said it's a shopfront program. He said it used to be a TAB building, and they used to back horses here, and now we're backing families. So that
Great.
was kind of neat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love it.
and it's been going for about 1.5 years.
Oh, he sounds
And
like
he
he
said
might be
they've
quite a
had.
good interview for me.
Yeah, indeed. He was great. He was enthusiastic, and
Mm.
yeah, he was good. Um, they had about 300 people trying to find jobs, and they've managed to get about 200 of them into work. And they say they sort of give ongoing support to people if they then lose their job for whatever reason. They try and help them and get them into another interview, etc. Doing a lot of work in that. And in particular, he mentioned encouraging women into construction jobs, because that seems to be an area where the construction industry is terribly prone to economic ups and downs. There are periods where there aren't jobs, but in general, he said it's good to get women as well as men into the construction jobs. A couple of other things. One thing I thought was really neat, he said their program has got 100 kids in the community being picked up each morning and driven to school and then taken back home. And he said a lot of those children are in gang-affiliated homes or
Yeah.
similar,
Gosh, what
where
a
they
difference
just
that would
wouldn't,
make.
yeah, just wouldn't go to school. I mean, the government's talking about the importance of getting children to school, and no one's going to argue with that. But sometimes people are just saying, well, the parents should just do it. Well, of course they should, but if they're not, it's not the kids' fault. And for a program like this, just go around and pick them up. Get them into the car and to school.
Yeah.
I thought that sounded really neat.
Mm.
And he mentioned the violence has risen between the schools in the community. Kids from one school bashing up kids from another school, and so they created a lounge for kids at their site, and the idea for kids from different schools to get to know one another, and that's certainly been helping, he said. And the last thing he mentioned that
Just
I sort
solutions,
of
eh?
thought
Like really practical and
really practical.
kind
Yeah,
solutions. Yeah.
yes. How are we going to make this actually work?
Yeah.
And they've got an eight week program aimed at home ownership, and they've got local real estate agents and lawyers and mortgage brokers, etc., coming along and talking to people. They said they've got more than 230 participants in the program at the moment. So
Gosh.
I think probably run in the evenings. And so they get these local people along to talk to them about problems and how they might overcome them in the course of buying homes. So far, 15 have bought their first homes. So, it's not a big number, but it'll take a while for people to get there because they've got to save the deposits and so on. But I just thought, hats off to you, Bala Tavita, and the program you're doing there. And yes, instead of sitting around and saying, well, parents should be doing this or whatever,
Yeah.
they're getting there and making it happen. Yeah, it was neat.
Very cool. And I'll send those details to one of my producers as well, and we might see if we can get Fala on to chat some more about it. Mary, thank you for the
Yeah.
inspiration today. It's a lovely way to end our conversation, and thanks as always for the tips.
It's a pleasure, Jesse. See you.
Mary
Bye.
Holm today with some of the things she learnt at Retirement Commission Te Ara Ahunga Ora's National Strategy for Financial Capability, second day of a conference she attended on Thursday.